first events from our One Book New Canaan program, which you've all seen and we've been pushing out to all the community. I know you've all read the book so far. We're really excited to explore this period in our history that I personally didn't know very much about, and we're very fortunate to have some hyper-local connections to some of the things that are in the book. So, as many of you know, during the summer of 1927 was Lindbergh's historic transatlantic first transatlantic flight, and that was spurred on by the Raymond Orteig Prize. So it was a contest that for prize money to see who could be the first one to accomplish that feat. And Raymond Orteig's descendants are with us, and they're New Canaan residents. They're with us here physically today. So I just learned this yesterday thanks to another community member. Liz and Steve Orteig, I just want, they were kind enough to bring some of their family memorabilia and some of their family history here to share with us. So I'm going to have Liz talk a little bit about her family and what Steve's family. We know.
Actually,
so thank you.
Steve is a great grandson of Raymond Orteig, the person who offered the prize. And I just brought a few items. You know, we have an autographed copy from Charles Lindbergh of his book, his biography, picture of the Hotel Lafayette, which Raymond Orteig owned. What else is there?
The check.
The check. Oh, there was an illuminated check. I guess the check is about this big, which is in the Smithsonian Institution. So I just brought a picture of it, and that was the actual prize that was awarded to Lindbergh. What else did I bring? Anything else there?
There's the inscribed.
Oh, the medal. Apparently, you know, it was not just Raymond Orteig. He established a committee. Raymond Orteig had 3 sons who also worked in the hotel. The oldest was Raymond II, and then the second was Evariste, who is Steve's grandfather. The third one was Jean Blaise, I think. And the 2 brothers married 2 sisters who happened to be the daughters of Raymond Orteig's partner. So it was all in the family. Very close connection.
Very confusing.
Yes. So, you know, your sister-in-law is your sister-in-law twice over, that sort of thing. In any case, what was I saying?
What you brought, and I think.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, you know, feel free to look at those. Oh, and the medal that I was talking. So there was a committee. I think it was 8 or 10 people, and each one of them got a medal like that. So that was the medal that Evariste Orteig got. So it was passed down in our family, and you know, a few other items, and we have other stuff. I just didn't have time to look this up. But that's basically it.
That is cool. Thank you. And so we've got lots of other aspects of the book that we're going to be exploring, including this Saturday. Well, you'll talk about it. You'll talk about it Saturday.
I will.
Yes, sure. Just do a pitch. But next week we've got a couple fun talks. One is about film history in the 1920s, so that was when sound came really into film, the first talkies. A look at the history of the eugenics movement in America, which is a very serious and important and very part of our history. So we're really excited about that. Next Monday, the 23rd, Terry Dinan is going to talk about local New Canaan history, what was going on in New Canaan in the summer of 1927. So lots of cool stuff and many other things as well. But here tonight, we're talking about aviation. So I want to introduce Vivian Birdsall, who is a teacher at Sachs Middle School and a pilot and all-around cool lady. Thank you, Vivian.
A few years ago, I I knew someone who called me up and said, "Could you come up to the old Rhinebeck aerodrome? I think you would really love it." And between education and your interest in education and your interest in aviation, I think you would really like what's happening there. And I went up to the old Rhinebeck aerodrome. I met these great guys, and decided I would bring my kids up. I'm the STEM teacher at Saks for science, technology, engineering, and math. So I brought my kids up one Saturday with their parents, and they kind of poked around, and it was great. They were running up and down, chasing the airplanes that were taking off. The old Rhinebeck Aerodrome is a flying museum, and they fell in love with it as well. And I had a bunch of boys who were really interested in flying, so we had a little flight club, and we had a little desktop simulator. Eventually, we ended up with 4 simulators, and one actually really big one. But I didn't have a lot of girls. But that time, when we went up, I brought a couple of girls with me, and they were very excited and found a few airplanes that they were sad that they were on the ground when all these other cool airplanes were flying. So long story short, we ended up doing something called a dinner and a movie, and we showed a little movie about the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome, and we made some money, and we were able to give old Rhinebeck the proceeds from that, and they fixed up this wonderful airplane from 1918, I keep saying. It was an Albatross, a wooden airplane, and we went back this past summer, and Ken Cassins, who's here with us, flew the airplane, but not before we got giant scissors, and we did a great big ribbon cutting ceremony with the kids, and all the kids grabbed a hold of the scissors, and we cut the ribbon together, and they were so excited. And now I have a girls' flight team, because they were just so excited about what happened, and just having the connection was so important. So this Saturday, this was what Cheryl was getting at, this Saturday I have some of my girls from my girls' flight team talking about women from the late 1920s and early 1930s. And so they have a really nice little presentation to do on Saturday. And also, we're bringing our simulators. So we'll have a 3-screen simulator, and we'll have one of our small simulators that our students actually built for us. So it should be really fun. But I really would like to introduce the people from Old Rhinebeck and get off the stage.
Tell us what time, 2 o'clock.
It's 1 o'clock the simulators start, and then 2 o'clock is Vivian.
Right.
1 o'clock for simulators, 2 o'clock for my flight team, my girls' flight team. So they're adorable, and we really want to encourage them, and they were so excited to be able to do this, which was so great that they want to reach out to the community like this. So I'm really proud of them, and I hope you come see them. But first I want to introduce Mike DiGiacomo, who is the president of the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome, and Ken Cassins, who is their chief mechanic and extraordinary pilot who's probably flown anything you could think of. Mike, if you'd like to start out.
So, thank you for coming out today. Thank you, Vivian and Cheryl, for inviting us. We're going to talk a little bit about the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome, what we do, and how that connects to the summer of 1927. And if you have any questions, just ask as we go along. We're happy to have questions.
Can you use the mic?
Oh, I think I can. Can you hear me? I don't know if it's on. Let's see. Yeah, I need Chip already. It didn't take long. Hello? There we go. Is that better? Okay. We got our first question out of the way. Good. All right. So, move forward with our little slideshow I put together. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm Mike DiGiacomo. I'm the museum president. I've been at the Aerodrome for about 13, 14 years, something like that. And I help out in the air shows. I help out in the museum board, help out with a little bit of everything. Ken, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, I'm Ken Cassins, and I fly at the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome, and I also do some maintenance over there. And we just have a great time. So if you've never been out there, get out there this summer and check us out.
Ken, you're too modest. He's flown just about everything at the Aerodrome, and he does, until last year, almost all of our maintenance. So we finally found someone to help him out. But so Cole Palin's old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. It was started by Cole Palin in 1958. Cole started the collection in 1951 with the purchase of the 6 aircraft in the Roosevelt Field Collection, which is a really neat connection to Lindbergh, because that's where Lindbergh took off for his historic flight. Cole had seen 6 planes there and was very much interested in them, always dreamed of owning them, and they eventually went up for public bid, and he bid his entire life savings on the 6 aircraft. These were 6 original World War I aircraft, which are now priceless in different museums all around the world, one which still remains at the Aerodrome, one which is at the Smithsonian, one which is at the Smithsonian, one is at the Air Force Museum, but he bid his life savings on these 6 planes that are worth now, are irreplaceable. He bid $1,500 on them. So luckily for Cole, he was able to save a lot of planes from destruction, and he had a lot of foresight. And the planes were 1918 SPAD 13, 1917 Avro 504K, 1918 Curtis Jenny, 1918 Standard J1, 1918 Sopwith Snipe, and a 19 Aeromarine 39B. The only one which still remains in the collection is the Aeromarine 39B. Cole first got the SPAD 13 flying at the Old Stormville Airport. Here's a picture of Cole flying the Curtis Jenny. A little bit info about Cole. He was born Henry Cole Palin, December 28, 1928, and he was in the U.S. Army during the Battle of the Bulge. He married his wife, Rita Wiedner, on March 17, 1967, and he unfortunately passed away December 7, 1993. As part of his will, he bequeathed one aircraft of their choice to the Smithsonian, one to the Air Force Museum. The Smithsonian chose the Sopwith Snipe, which was one of the original 6, and the Air Force Museum chose his SPAD 13. Another nice picture of Cole in front of a Newport 28, which is now also at the Smithsonian, correct?
I believe so.
Yes. Early history. Property was purchased in 1958. The first air show was in 1960 to a crowd of about 25 people. Now we put on air shows from mid-June until mid-October, and crowds can range from anywhere from still 25 people on a rainy day to upwards of 1,000 people. Cole flew original aircraft, and where none existed, built accurate replicas with original engines, and we still do that. Ken's right now, we're going to talk about it later, but he's building the most accurate replica of the Spirit of St. Louis ever to fly, and it has an original engine in it, just like what Cole did. And he developed a zany melodrama to go along with the air show, which I won't give away too much about that, but it's goofy and it's fun, and if you come out on the weekend, you'll really enjoy it. Next is a picture of our original 1918 Curtis Jenny getting pushed into one of the hangars. The airfield is set up just like the original airfields at the time, with old hangars, just like you would see in Lindbergh's era. In fact, you'll see a picture later on. This is one of our barnstorming aircraft. This is a Great Lakes from 1931, and a lot of the technology that was developed by Lindbergh and the Ryan Company and others in the 1920s was implemented in the 1930s, and this was one of the great planes from the 1930s. In summer 1927, this is kind of the root of our whole talk here tonight. I must admit, I didn't read the whole book. But I did watch a video about the book with Bill Bryson talking about it. So I have 2 small children. I'm a little bit busy. But I did do a little bit of homework. But Bill Bryson said the 2 things that really inspired him to write the book was that Babe Ruth hit 60 homers, and the same summer Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic. So he saw that was a lot of things were going on that summer, and as he researched it more and more, he found out more things that went on that summer, and that was what the summer 1927 was about. One of the planes in our collection is from 1927. This one. It's a Waco biplane, the Weaver Aircraft Company, and it's kind of a typical aircraft from that period. It's a 1927 model. It has an OX-5 engine, which was a surplus engine from World War I, so a very cheap engine to get a hold of. And a lot of people flew these and did what they call barnstorming in them. Jump in anywhere you want here, Ken, if you want to say something. But they could put 2 people in the front, fly them around, or do tricks, fly around, do loops, things like that, and they were very common. Cole owned this for a while, flew it for a few years, and it now sits in the museum. Common car from 1927 was the Model T. This is one from our collection. This is actually a 1927 Model T. We have ones earlier, all the way up until 1914, 1912 or so. But this is the latest year of the Model T. And in 1927, actually Ford developed the Model A, and that came out, which surpassed the Model T. But the Model T was America's car at that time. This is a neat car. This is a 1927 Chandler. Just got donated to the museum. A very nice person donated it. It's very nice because it's just exactly the type of car you would see in 1927. It was a little bit more modern, a little bit more futuristic than the Model T. A very nice, well-appointed car, and a beautiful restoration these people did on it before they donated it to us. Here's a nice picture of our 1918 Curtis Jenny up in the air, flying. Ken actually did the restoration on this many years ago. It's still flying. It has an original OX5 or Hispano Suiza engine, which powers it very nicely. It's been flying for many, many years. Cole Palin actually bought it sight unseen, thought it was a standard J1, which was a similar aircraft, but not quite as good. It's been flying for many, many years here at the aerodrome. Next is one of the acts that we do on the weekend. It's called the Death-Defying Delsey Dive. And what we do is we go on up and fly up high, and the pilot drops out a roll of toilet paper and then sees how many times he can cut it on the way down until they get to the ground. And you can see one of our planes here, a Tiger Moth, a 1940s Tiger Moth, just as it cut through the ribbon. Dave King at the controls, or maybe Bill King if it was earlier, his father. So we do a lot of different acts from the barnstorming era, and that was one of them that you would see in an air show. Just if you went to an air show in 1927, you'd see acts just like that. Here's a picture from back in the 20s of barnstorming, different acts they would do, or the things they would do for publicity, or ways to get people interested in aviation, or make a few bucks. Somebody on the wing of a Curtis Jenny, or standard J1 actually, looks like. And this is something else we still do this day at the aerodrome. Going to the aerodrome is like taking a step back in time, back into the 1920s or 1930s. You can still go for a biplane ride. You can still be a barnstormer for a day. And this is our 1929 new standard biplane that we still do rides in every weekend and weekdays by appointment as well. But it sits 4 people in the front, pilot sits in the back. It operates at a nice small field like old Rhinebeck right off the grass. And the front is our fashion show where adults and kids get dressed up in period clothing from the 1920s and 30s. And,
what is the elevation of the planes when they go up? How high are you up?
like Ken answer.
Well, we usually stay about 1,500 feet maximum, and that's what we usually start the Delsey dive at, because we're working our way down, cutting the toilet paper. The air show airplanes, during the show time, it's anywhere from 300 to 500 feet. We don't fly over the crowd, but we have a specific area, adjacent to the runway that we fly over, called the show line, and so we don't get very high.
Yeah, keep it nice and low so everybody can see what's going on. Yeah. So this is a picture of some of the planes flying during our weekend air shows. 1940s Fleet biplane, which was a trainer in World War II. Tiger Moth from the 1940s, which is also a Canadian trainer. Piper J3, I guess, P11, from 1930s, 40s. And the back, Tiger Moth, another Tiger Moth trainer from a British trainer. So, flying in formation, nice shot. This is one of my favorite shots. I was telling Vivian and everyone just had something to eat. I thought this was a beautiful shot. It's not exactly 1920s aviation, but it's such a beautiful shot that I had to include it. This is part of our weekend air shows. This is the Fokker D7. Ken actually completed this plane, and he's piloting the plane in the picture, but I thought it was a beautiful shot. It's painted up with a 7 Swabians paint scheme on the side. We were talking about that as well. But it has original engine from 1918, 200 horsepower Mercedes engine, straight out of World War I. So really neat plane. Ken does a beautiful job with this. Vivian thinks it's the coolest thing ever. He has a big loop with it and has the smoke on. It's a beautiful routine. I'll let you talk about some of these, Ken. I can click through the slides, or you can show your...
Does everybody know who this is? Well, anyway, that's Charles Lindbergh, of course, in the Spirit of St. Louis. And at the aerodrome, we're building an exact replica of the airplane. Well, pretty exact, but we're not putting all the gas tanks in it. We don't need all that fuel. He originally had 450 gallons of gas, and he had 5 tanks. We're only going to put 1 tank in with about 50 gallons, so we're not going to fly it across the Atlantic. The progress on the airplane, we started it actually in 1996 and worked on it on and off until 2003. And then from 2003 to 2012, there was nothing done on the project. And then 2012, we started working on it again, and hopefully we're going to have it flying this summer. So we're making good progress on it.
Why was there a break for so many years?
What was the question?
Why was there a break for so many years?
Oh, well, I left the aerodrome for about 9 years, and nothing was done on the airplane, fortunately. So they had a restructuring of the board, and I came back, and so we started working on it again. So, like I say, hopefully this summer we'll have it going. So.
I actually pulled Ken off of working on it today so he could come here today.
Yeah, I was working on it this morning, so.
Yeah, he's doing a phenomenal
So.
job.
Okay, here are two pictures. The one on the left is the original photograph of the Spirit of St. Louis going together. They're mating the wing to the fuselage, and it's all done by hand. You can see there's about a dozen people holding that wing elevated so they can move the fuselage back underneath and set it in place. On the right is our Spirit of St. Louis. We have the wing on it already, but it's got to come back off again so we can put the fabric on it. But we had a sign painter duplicate the sign, and Mike and I put the sign up, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And it's pretty nice. It's the woman that did that sign did a great job on it. And you can see our Spirit. It's got the same type engine that Lindbergh had, the same propeller. All the instruments in the cockpit are exactly the same. And the fuel tank that is right behind the instrument panel is a dummy tank. Our tank is further forward, right behind the firewall, which is about 2 feet behind the engine. And that, like I said, is about 50 gallons. And that would give us about a four-hour endurance.
Excuse me, well, we're on this plane, may I ask you a quick question? We just saw the actual plane in Washington, and it seemed, and I'd heard about this, but how while we're looking at the plane, how they could see out the plane with the engine in front of it. It seemed like you'd almost have to stick his head out the side window. It just seemed very difficult to see past the engine front of the plane.
Well, it is. They did install a periscope which came out the left side on the top corner of the side window, but that was very limited. He couldn't use it for takeoff or landing. He used the periscope when he was flying low over the water on his departure. He was worried about sailboats with their tall masts, and so he did use it. He limited the use of it, but it wasn't very good for, like I said, takeoff and landing. But as you sit in the airplane, you have a peripheral vision of about like this. In other words, from here back, you can see. And any of the airplanes that we fly at the aerodrome, they're what they call tail draggers. The tail sits on the ground, and you can't see ahead of it anyway, any of them. So the only difference with the Spirit is once you get airborne and leveled off, you don't have the forward visibility that you would in some of the other airplanes. But most of the flying, when we're flying, we do little gentle S-turns so we can see what's ahead of us, especially when we're climbing out with a nose-high attitude.
Why was it built without a windshield, if you will?
Well, the cockpit was placed behind all the fuel tanks, and that was mainly for weight and balance because he wanted the weight of the fuel up ahead, and as a secondary option to that, if he was in a crash, he didn't want to have fuel behind him. So it was more of a natural place for the cockpit to be located. And, you know, over the ocean, he didn't need to worry about any traffic or anything like that. So, and then when he was flying the mail, it was the same situation. You know, he didn't have very good forward visibility in those old de Havilland DH4s and things. So it was almost a natural thing that you didn't really have to see forward. Sounds crazy, but it so.
A lot of the old planes are like that. When you put that big radial engine up front, you can't see very much.
Yeah, the rides plane that we use, the 4 passengers are up front, the engine's ahead of them, and actually in the Spirit of St. Louis, you have better visibility on the ground when you're taxiing things than you do in the New Standard, because the New Standard's a biplane. You have that bottom wing below and ahead of you, and you can't even see the landing gear on it. This, you can actually see the landing gear, and as you're in the cockpit, you can actually see, you can see, here's the window back here, and you can look right down and to about right here on the ground, this whole area you can see, whereas this you can't. But so you have quite a bit of visibility, believe it or not. So it's you know, one of those things. It's goes with the territory. You know, it's not like today where you have a nose wheel airplane and you can see straight ahead while you're sitting on the ground. You have a question?
Could I ask one more about the Spirit of St. Louis?
Sure.
I heard you say it's the most accurate reproduction, and I'm aware that I think there were a couple of duplicates made for the Jimmy Stewart movie, and I think one of them is down at the Cradle of Aviation Museum on Long Island.
Right.
It looked to me like they had very different spinners on those, different shaped spinners or something.
Right.
I never understood what.
Well, the movie airplanes were actually Ryan Brohm's, which was a production airplane that they made afterwards, and they converted them back to sort of look like the Spirit of St. Louis. And you can pick out a lot of details that are wrong with those airplanes. Like you say, the spinner shapes on a lot of them. They made, I think, three of them. And then out in California, the Tall Man's collection, they built a replica to fly at the Paris Air Show and stuff like that. So there are a few out there, and there's a couple being made now. There's one up in the West Coast, northwest coast of the United States that is going to be a pretty accurate one too. So the Experimental Aircraft Association made 2 of them, but they're pretty far off from what the original one looked like. So. Okay, that's New York to Paris. You can see you avoided all the Middle East down there. But that was in the good old days.
How much fuel did he have left when he arrived?
He had between, I've read a couple of different accounts, between 70 and 80 gallons. And he was burning approximately 11 gallons of gas an hour. And it was a 33-and-a-half-hour flight. But he had enough fuel to go on to Rome, Italy. So. And he had enough oil left, too. I think he started out with 27 gallons of oil, and I think he had like 15 gallons left when he got there. Yes?
Do any of the original plans for the plane still exist, or did you have to just take measurements off the
Well, there were no original plans. The airplane was built in 60 days, and the Ryan Company was, they were producing a mail plane called the M1 and M2. So they used as many of the components that they had on the shelf, like all the wing ribs and all of the tail section was from their production airplane. So that speeded up their time to complete the airplane. Mike's going to show you a wing rib. This is the full-size 7-foot chord, and the chord is the distance between the trailing edge and the leading edge. And that's the actual size of the wing rib of the Spirit of St. Louis. Does everybody know what a wing rib is? Okay, Mike, if you show us the model, you can show them where the wing ribs are. There's 51 of those wing ribs in the wing.
This would be the part part that goes this way.
So you have two spars. It's a one-piece wing, 46 feet long, and there's 51 ribs.
It's a straight wing, so
They're all the same except for where the ailerons are, the controls out on the tip, the ailerons. They're all those ribs are the same. So we had to make 51 of those, and you make them in a jig. We only had one jig, so it took a while.
Why did you make 51? It's an uneven number.
Well, the one in the middle.
Right where you were sitting in, right in the middle?
Yeah, they started out with the first one right over his head.
Okay.
So then,
25 on each side, and then one on the side.
Okay.
Good question.
You always think it's, halfway equal.
yeah.
It's one wing.
Yeah, it's a one-piece wing, 46 feet long, and like I said, the chord is 7 feet wide.
How did you get an engine for the one you're building?
Yeah, good question. Cole Palin got it, and he got those new standards that we used for the rides plane. He got 6 of those airplanes, and some of them were converted to crop dusters, so they had some corrosion issues. But there was 2 that were not converted to crop dusters, and they never saw any of the chemicals or the dust or spray. So they were in nice shape. So those are the 2 that Cole had fixed up for ride plane. And in that collection of 6 airplanes was this particular engine. And Cole was always a big Lindbergh fan, and he always wanted to have a Spirit of St. Louis flying at the aerodrome. Unfortunately, Cole passed away before he could realize that dream. But he had collected a lot of the components, like the earth inductor compass and several of the instruments, and like I said, the engine. So we had a pretty good start. To get back to the question about the plans, the airplane, like I said, was built mainly on the shop floor as a one-of-a-kind type airplane. And all the shop drawings and stuff that were just sketches and things were made up by all the employees that built the airplane. We have some drawings. Now, these drawings were produced for the Ryan Aeronautical Library after the airplane had become successful. They had a lot of questions about it, and so that one of the factory workers, a fellow named Ed Morrow, drew up a set of drawings years later. And those drawings, quite a bit of it was done by memory. The overall dimensions and the outlines and the shape were pretty accurate, but there was a lot of discrepancies, like in the door frame size and the window sizes and stuff like that. So I had the fuselage all welded up, and I got looking at some factory pictures that we had obtained, and things just didn't look right. So, of course, we built everything to the drawings that we had. So I went down to the Smithsonian. We have a friend down there, one of the curators, and before the museum would open for the day, we did this on 2 different occasions. They took me up in the cherry picker because the airplane was hanging at the time, and so I was able to take measurements and photographs inside and out, and so we made the necessary corrections, so we have it pretty accurate now. So.
What size engine? That looks like a fairly good size engine.
Well, it's a Wright J5, and it produces 223 horsepower. So it's, and at the time, why Lindbergh chose that engine is when he was flying the airmail routes, he was daydreaming or night dreaming, whatever you want to call it, he read some articles about the Wright J5, and they had one on the test stand running continuously for 150 hours. And and he knew about the Orteig Prize. He thought, gee, that'd be possible to build an airplane that would run that long reliably. So
did he start with the engine and then work backwards?
Well, basically, yes. He wanted an airplane built with that engine. And he went to Giuseppe Belanca, who had an airplane with that type engine on it. But they would sell him the airplane, but they wanted to name the pilot, and they didn't want Lindbergh to fly it. So Lindbergh, later he contacted the Ryan Airlines, and they said they could build the airplane with that engine in, I think they quoted him something like 90 days, but they actually did it in 60 days. So he went with Ryan. So, yeah.
Was Lindbergh's plane a one-off, or were there some other ones like it built contemporaneously?
Well, yeah, it was a Ryan design. There were other airplanes, like I say, the Belanca was similar, single engine.
Did Ryan build copies of it?
Oh, yes, actually they built one for the Japanese. A Japanese newspaper, once Lindbergh was successful, wanted a copy of the Spirit of St. Louis, so Ryan built it for him. And this newspaper wanted to fly from Japan to California. Well, they took delivery on the airplane. The Japanese government wouldn't let them do that. So this newspaper set a course, endurance course around the island of Japan with the airplane, and it was later destroyed in World War II.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you know what year that delivered it?
What year that was?
Before World War II?
Oh, definitely, yeah. It was right shortly after Lindbergh was successful. That second Spirit of St. Louis was built. So, yes?
When did planes start using flaps? And did the Spirit of St. Louis have flaps?
No, the Spirit of St. Louis didn't have flaps. Flaps were around. They weren't too common. But the flaps are a control surface on the trailing edge of the wing inboard of the ailerons. And what they do is you can use flaps like on your Cessnas, and a lot of the modern airplanes, they all have flaps to slow you down and get you a little more, a lower landing speed and things like that. And it gets you off the ground a little faster too on takeoff. Let's see, what do we got? Another picture up here. I'm afraid to push the wrong button. Okay, here's the Spirit in the Smithsonian. And that's the way it appeared when we were down there on 2 different occasions. They took us up in the cherry picker, and we were able to look into the cockpit. We couldn't climb into it naturally, but we were able to lean in and get some detailed measurements and photographs. And just recently, they lowered it down to the floor to do some restoration work on it. And I understand it's going to be on the floor for about 8 months. So when they have it on the floor, they take the wheels off, the original wheels and tires. They don't want to set the airplane on that. So they have a set of Volkswagen wheels that go on it, and they look terrible. So it's sitting there with these car wheels on it, and why they don't, I mean, we'd even loan them some wheels, the correct type to put on it, but anyway.
Can you go inside? Will they show it during the sightseeing right now?
Well, they have a fence around it that you can only get so close.
But you can actually see it on the floor?
Yes, yeah.
You know, it's a great way to see it, and maybe the school knows it, is their simulator has a Spirit of St. Louis. And if you really want to check to see what it would feel like being in there, I don't know whether you've done this or not, but there is one of the selections on the Microsoft simulator is the Ryan, is the Spirit of St. Louis. And it's very claustrophobic when you look at all the instruments staring you in the face, and most of them are to adjust the, his weight and balance on the gas tanks. But he's got all of these things in front of him, put you to sleep.
Yeah, there's about 12 or 13 fuel valves in the airplane, along with all the flight instruments, engine instruments.
Why is the front of the Smithsonian's painted yellow? I don't remember seeing.
Well, it actually isn't painted yellow. They had put a varnish on that to try to preserve the aluminum, burnishing on the aluminum, and it turned yellow. But that would have been a silver, an aluminum, bare aluminum color with the engine turning on it.
Are they gonna restore it to the original color?
They talk about doing that, and I don't know if that's what they're planning on doing while it's down or not, but they have talked about correcting that, but it's gonna be a very time-consuming thing, because there are some, if you notice on the lower portion of the cowl, there's insignias and flags of all the countries that the airplane was in. After he was successful, they shipped the airplane back on a Navy destroyer and reassembled it, and then he did a goodwill tour of all the 48 states. So he went to every state, and you know, it was a goodwill publicity tour to promote aviation. So yeah, when he finally gave the airplane to the Smithsonian, it had almost 500 hours on it. I think it had 489 flight hours. So he flew that airplane quite a bit.
When did the Smithsonian get it?
I believe it was in 1928 sometime. I'm not sure the exact date.
And has it been on display more or less continuously since?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that the original fabric?
Yes and no. When it got to Paris, the crowd rushed the airplane, and they grabbed and poked at it, and they put big holes in the side of the fuselage. They actually tore out some of the aileron gap seals. And on the rudder, right here, I'll show you, right in this area here, was the Ryan insignia, which was an R with wings on it. And that was cut out in Paris. Somebody stole that. Now the other side is intact. But when they do, I say yes and no on the original fabric. The whole fuselage was stripped of the fabric and replaced in Paris. So the wing fabric and I'd say all of the tail fabric except for the where the patches, where the Ryan insignia was, is original. And there is some fabric that, when it came back, they took the center wing tank out for some reason. And the fabric that covered that center wing tank is in Yale University.
Why did they get it?
Is it made out of? What kind of fabric is it?
It's grade A cotton. It's I have a sample piece right here. Yeah. Yeah, the yellowish fabric is cotton, and then that's what they used. And the white fabric is what we use nowadays, is Dacron, and it's a modern material.
Why did Yale get it, and what are they doing with it?
Well, all of Lindbergh's papers and things are at Yale. So they have some of the fabric from that gas tank. And the one thing I forgot to mention on our replica, Spirit of St. Louis, wherever possible, we're using modern materials as long as it doesn't distract from the original appearance of the airplane. You can't tell the difference in the fabric once it's painted. So we're using modern fabric, the Dacron, and that's yes.
So on that wing, where you had all those different 51 pieces, and then the fabric is over it, that fine fabric is the only thing?
Yes. Yep. It's about 2.7 ounce per square yard.
It's actually, it doesn't look like much, but it's actually very strong. It has to be tested every year by the FAA, by us, and certified to fly.
So what happens if it gets wet?
It's all painted.
Oh, it's painted?
Yes,
Yeah.
After it's put on, it's
Paint
painted?
called dope, yeah.
Okay, so it's.
Yeah, the silver is a paint.
Any water?
Yeah, that seals it up. Yeah. Yeah.
And is it like a canvas? Is it as heavy as canvas?
No, it's, there's some samples coming around. It's about the same weight as your bed sheet.
And it's just one layer of that?
Yep, just one layer.
It doesn't seem that strong, but we had a plane a couple years ago that hadn't passed this test and had to be recovered. And while we were uncovering the fabric that was no good, that was not strong enough to fly, a volunteer asked me, he said, well, how strong is it? Well, let's find out. This fabric's no good. So we took a screwdriver and poked it, and it actually took a really hard poke to poke a hole in it. So you have to try really hard. It's actually very strong.
So the fabric is only on the wings, or is it also on the body?
No, the entire aircraft is covered with fabric. The fuselage and the tail, yeah, it's all fabric covered.
Well, then, there was a picture of the Spirit of St. Louis earlier that looked as like it was, like metal. Like it had, that one right there. It has like an embossed.
Well, there are certain things, the cowling and stuff is metal.
Oh, that's metal.
And then that long strut that's right next to Lindbergh, that's the landing gear shock absorber. That's covered with metal too.
So it's from Lindbergh to our left, that is fabric?
Yeah.
Those
And then the
cowling.
front is
Yeah, this whole fuselage, the wing, and all of the tail, and even these hubcaps type things are fabric.
Yeah, the cowling, the part where it says Spirit of St. Louis is metal because you have to take those sections off to work on the engine or to fuel it or do other work. So it's much easier to take a whole piece of metal off and then secure
what
it
is
back
that
on.
ring that looks like metal, like a bracelet almost? What is that?
Oh, that's the engine.
That's the engine?
Yes, that's just the ends of the cylinder sticking out.
Oh, okay.
This right here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It's called a radial engine because the cylinders are radially arranged around the crankcase. And then they're sticking out exposed like that for air cooling. So. And then you can just see right below the S in the Spirit of St. Louis, that little short, that's the exhaust stack. So each cylinder has an exhaust stack. And it's, at night you'd see fire coming out of that. So. Yes?
Why is it covered in fabric?
Well, it's a steel tube structure on the fuselage, and the wings are all wood, and fabric is just the natural thing to use. If they tried to cover it with metal, it would be hard to attach to the wood structure, and so it's just it's what they used in those days, just regular fabric.
Was weight an issue?
Yes.
I believe some of the RAF bombers in World War II were fabric covered.
Yes, that's true. Matter of fact, on just about every airplane in World War II, there was some fabric, either control surfaces, elevators and rudders, ailerons. The B-29 had fabric on the ailerons and the rudder and elevators. Yeah. Sir?
Just two real quick questions about Spirit still. Could you tell me what the kind of wood they were using, or you are using for the ribs? Is it like birch or something like that? And the second question was, I remember reading Lindbergh saying that aside from the damage done to the plane, somebody lifted his logbook at the time.
Right.
Has that ever been turned up anywhere?
Not to my knowledge, no. The wood in the structure, primarily the wing spars, are Sitka spruce, and the ribs could be made out of Sitka spruce also, but we used Douglas fir because we had some availability of the Douglas fir. Sitka spruce is pretty expensive today. So, sir?
During the flight, Lindbergh, as I understand, Lindbergh had to adjust the fuel flow from tanks to balance things. Did he have to do anything with the oil flow, or was that an automatic feed into the crankcase?
No, oil was all, just complete circulation, just like in your car.
So it burned up that much oil?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they consume oil. Yeah.
Talk about that wood that's going around.
Yeah, we're passing around a sample of some Sitka spruce, and that's basically what the wings are made out of, the wing spars. And then there's another piece of wood going around that was used quite extensively in the Spirit of St. Louis, and that's called balsa wood. And balsa wood is very light, And it was used mainly for the fairings on the wing struts. These struts over here. And the landing gear struts. Those were round tubes. And what they did, a round tube is very draggy. It's not streamlined. So they streamlined the struts with balsa wood and made it an airfoil shape. And then they covered it with fabric. So that's what the balsa wood, and the wingtips are also made out of balsa wood for the airplane. Yes?
This is off the topic, but you had a pilot who flew the Piper Cub and did all kinds of acrobatics in it.
Right.
I think he's retired, has he?
Yeah, that was Stan Segala.
But was that plane specially stressed, or was that a standard?
No, that was a standard. It was a Piper PA-11. And the aerobatics that Stan did and what most of the people do with Cubs, it's not very stressful. They're what they call gentle aerobatics. I mean, a loop is not really stressful on the airplane. A tailspin is not stressful. Wing overs and things like that. You're not imposing quite a big load on the airplane like some of these modern aerobatic airplanes. Real violent maneuvers, but with the Air Show Act, it was very gentle maneuvers. Probably didn't pull more than 1.5, 2 Gs at the most.
We do that act again now. Clay Hammond does that act again now at the aerodrome. He's yeah. So, still goes on.
Oh, you were saying about the spruce. Is that why Hughes called it the spruce goose?
Well, actually, the spruce goose, yeah. Because spruce was commonly used, but a lot of that, the Hughes airplane was made out of plywood, birch plywood, and there was a lot of laminations of the plywood and things like. And there was some spruce used in it, but since the airplane was mainly made out of wood, spruce rhymes with goose, so there you got it, you know. So. You want to pass around that steel tube?
Well, I was going to wait for the one about the.
Oh, okay. Here we are. Here we are again. What can you see in this picture? Well, we have the wing structure mainly, but if you look behind the engine, you'll see all those skinny little tubes. Well, that's all what they call chromolybdenum tubing, and it's very strong. And we have some samples of the tube around here. And if you hold it up to the light and look down the middle of it, it looks like a mirror. I mean, it's very, very polished inside, and that's done chemically. The grade of steel is 4130 chromolybdenum. And that's the standard for aircraft construction nowadays. Back in 1927, they would have used a 1020 or 1025 steel tube, which was not quite as strong, but was extruded the same way. It was seamless. There's no weld seam or anything on it. So they used that mostly, well, actually, Tony Fokker, World War I, started using it extensively on his Fokker aircraft. And they developed the welding system, oxyacetylene welding. And we have a sample coming around that you can see where the two tubes are welded into a cluster.
Tell you a short story about this. I told Ken we're going a couple days ago, asked me if we want to go along. He said, yeah, sure. So I show up at the aerodrome today. He says, oh, I welded this up this morning just to show them.
Just be careful, it's still hot. But that's done with a small oxyacetylene torch. And like I say, Fokker sort of developed that. Prior to that, most of the British airplanes and the French airplanes were wooden structures in the fuselage. And they were wire braced, but this is the more modern method. And then Spirit of St. Louis has done that entire fuselage is done up that way with the chromoly steel tubing welded. And you can see that structure, those little angles up in here. All these tubes steel tubing, and the longerons, top and bottom, are all steel tubing. So it's just a big cage. It almost looks like a crane. And then they run stringers down the side, which are wood. There's a good shot. That's the one we were looking for. And you can see all that steel tubing, and at each cluster joint, it's all welded like it's a sample that's going around.
And we could talk about the fancy chairs.
Hmm?
The chair.
Yeah, there's a wicker chair in there that just like Lindbergh had. And then to keep the fabric off of the steel tubing, they would put what they call stringers, which are made out of wood. And the ones on the back of the fuselage aren't installed yet, but you can see them on the model. Yeah, those are stringers there. And they give shape to the fabric. And if you look at the model, you can actually see the stringers, which are wood. And those are some of the things that got broken in Paris when they rushed the airplane. So they in order to fix that, even though the fabric in spots was still intact, they had to take all the fabric off the fuselage to repair the wooden stringers. So that's that goes.
Replacement parts for your J5.
Well, believe it or not, there are parts out there. Our engine was overhauled by Mike Connor down in Preston, Georgia, and he's one of these guys that's been collecting Wright engine parts for years, and he's got quite an inventory. And he overhauled our engine, and he's a good source for parts. Yes?
What's the reason for making inside the tube shiny?
What's the reason? It's just part of the process of making it. It comes out, it turns out like that. And they don't want to have any scratches inside because that could be a potential crack. So it's just part of the process, and I think they actually flush an acid through there to take any slag and anything else out like that. Because the tube is formed over a mandrel, so, yes?
A different question. Was Lindbergh a short person?
No, Lindbergh was 6'3", I believe.
So if he was sitting in that chair, could he stand up once in a while? I mean,
No.
For 33 hours he was sitting?
No, it's like you couldn't stand up in your car when you're in your driver's seat, so.
It looked bigger here, you know, when you see
Yeah.
that. It looks big.
It is, but it isn't. I mean, it does look big, but it isn't, so. But the wicker seat is actually a pretty exact replica of the original seat, so.
That one, or you want to move forward one?
All right, let's see what we got. Okay, here's a good shot of the wings, or the wing, I should say. And you can see where the ribs are all in place on the spars. The spars are the two parallel beams that run the whole length of this whole span of the wing, and they give it the actual strength. The ribs form the airfoil, which creates the lift. So, this particular airfoil is called a Clark Y airfoil, which is it's a pretty good all-around airfoil.
So the spars, they're single piece? They're
not. No, there's 4 spars, the front spar and the rear spar, but they're 2 pieces and they're spliced in the middle. There's a 12-to-1 scarf joint right in the middle, and then that gets a doubler plate over it about 3 feet long. So, and all the glue is resorcinol glue, so it's all approved materials. So, yes?
Was that the same as the prototype? With having 2 pieces joined?
Yes. Yeah, because to get a one piece of spruce 46 feet long is, even back then when it was more readily available, would be a hard task.
It has to be the spruce has to be perfect. Annual rings have to be a distance apart. It can't have any pitch pockets. It has to be absolutely perfect. So just finding a piece 20-something feet long is difficult.
Yes?
Who's maintaining the other planes while you're fooling around with this?
Well, fortunately, the planes right now aren't due any inspections until about May and June. And by then, I hope we're going to have one of our mechanics back, and we're going to put him to work. And I want to stay working on this because we want to get this thing done. So.
Part of the reason why it's taken so long, we keep pulling Ken off to do something else, like this plane needs restoration, this needs that, and he keeps getting pulled away from this.
Yes.
What's the deadline?
Well, we're hoping sometime this summer.
No deadline with airplanes.
Yeah.
When he's giving himself a deadline.
Well, I tell everybody it's 90% done, we got 90% to go. So. Sir?
Before you fly it, does it have to be certificated and so forth?
Yeah, right.
And so, does this require any concessions on authenticity to current standards in order to get a license?
Well, the airplane right now is registered, and before we fly it, the FAA has to come out and inspect it. What they're doing nowadays is the FAA is usually sending out private individuals which are designated by the FAA to do the inspection. So somebody will, from the government or the government's representative will look at the airplane, and that's true with all experimental aircraft. This is licensed experimental, and so it's what they call amateur built.
So you don't have to depart from the original in order to get your license, is that right?
No, the original one was never certified anyway.
No, but I mean, is it exactly the same as the original, or does getting the license require that you depart somewhat from?
Oh, no, it has nothing to do with it. You could build an exact replica of it, and you'd still have to do go through the same procedures. Yeah.
I'm curious, the ones who come and inspect it, how much do they actually know about it? Do you have to give them instructions, or how much do they actually know?
Well, these inspectors have a background in aviation, and they've examined all sorts of home-built aircraft. And at one point, several years ago, you couldn't cover anything like the wing. They had to come out and look at the wing and everything before you covered it. And then they'd sign it off, say, okay, it's approved for cover. They don't do that anymore. They rely on inspections by looking inside the wing through the covering and stuff. There's inspection holes that you can look into. And so they just go through the whole thing and, look at different things. But they don't have to look at it twice. So. And then once they approve it, for flight, and then you have to fly it in a restricted area for 25 hours, and it's 25 hours or 40 hours. 25 if you have a certified engine, which we do, and a certified propeller, which we do. See, those two components were actually production items which were certified way back when. So if you had an experimental engine like a car engine in there or a hand-carved wood propeller, then you'd have a 40-hour restriction over a certain area. So.
Non-stop?
No, it's just, yeah. Yes?
So how much does the wingspan actually weigh?
The wing itself is probably about 300 pounds. I haven't actually weighed it, but
So the earlier picture showed several people placing the wing.
Right.
So there were like, what, 6 or
there was about over a dozen people there in that picture. Yeah.
They have to hold it for a while and get it bolted up.
Yeah.
How much does the entire plane weigh without fuel?
2,150 pounds. And we haven't weighed ours yet, so we're not sure. We're hoping to be in that ballpark. But, yes?
How long is the wingspan?
46 feet, and it's one piece. Yes?
You said that about the glue?
Yeah.
Back then, were they using animal glue?
Well, they used what the common glue in those days was casein glue. And casein glue would, excuse me?
Milk?
I'm not sure what the chemical structure of it was, but it wouldn't last very long. I mean, you know, 50, 60 years, it would start to deteriorate. The resorcinol glue that we use it's a resin. It's a 2-part mixture. It is FAA approved, and FAA even lists in their publications that the resorcinol is the preferred glue, but any glue with a mil-spec number is approved.
How
So
long that one would last?
they don't know. They've subjected it to boiling water for 24 hours and it didn't lose any strength. And I mean, it's almost like these composites now. They don't really know what the life is on these things, but it is quite a long time. So.
What was the cruising speed on Spirit of St. Louis?
It depended on the weight. When it was light, it would do 125 miles an hour.
But when he took off fully loaded, what would it do?
He was probably doing, I would say, I've read anywhere from 98 to 100. Yeah. Yes?
When the fabric was stretched over the wings and the body of the plane, was it just stretched over and then somehow adhered or glued in one place, or were each of these little ribs of wood, was there glue placed on it?
No, it would have either been, it would have been sewn around the perimeter with a baseball stitch, or it would have been glued with the nitrate dope around the perimeters.
Okay.
And then with the cotton, what they would do is they'd spray it with water. And when it dried, it would shrink it. And then they would put the dope on it, the aircraft dope, which is sort of like a lacquer almost. And that would also start to loosen it up again, but as it dried, it would shrink it back up and actually get it very tight.
So, going over, what did you call those again?
Wing ribs.
The wing ribs. On the top of those wing ribs, there was no glue put on?
No.
Okay, so.
No.
Okay.
But after the fabric was put on, what they would do is they'd rib stitch the wings. And yeah, it would go right around the whole rib. They have needles about that long that actually go, and they tie the fabric right to the wing. Now, did you ever see an old convertible car going down the road and the roof is billowing up because it's loose? Well, the fabric would do the same thing. So they stitch it down to the wing to keep it from ballooning up. So. Yeah, wherever there was stitch, there'd be 2 holes on either side, so they put what they call a surface tape over the fabric. So.
Because with it being cotton, with changes in weather, it would, or would the dope totally?
No, the dope stabilized it. Once the dope penetrated all the fibers in the cotton, then the cotton wouldn't really shrink much. It would change a little bit with temperature, but the actual tautness would stay pretty close to the original.
So was there aluminum in this dope?
Yes, there's aluminum powder, and that's mixed in with the clear dope, and then that protects it from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. Now, if the airplane was going to be painted a color, it would still be all painted silver first, and then the color would be put on top of that. But with the Spirit of St. Louis, they just left it silver, mainly for speed as far as construction goes. They didn't take the time to paint it, and the weight too. So. All right, there's a picture of the control stick, which works the elevators and the ailerons, and then you can see the fuel valves all around it.
Now, when they were using fuel, did he have to sort of like use fuel from one tank and then go to another to keep it
Yes.
balanced?
Yes. Yep, he would select the fuel. Those 3 valves that are right below the instrument board there represented the wing tanks. There was a left, center, and right wing tank. And then these two valves over in this corner, I wish I had my laser pointer, but
I can point for you if you want to talk.
okay, that would have been the forward nose tank in the fuselage, and that would be the main tank that you see right there. Over there on the right side there, Mike, you can see the gas tank. That would be all gas tank in front of them, see? So that whole thing filled up that whole front of the fuselage with fuel tank. There's cutouts on the bottom for the rudder pedals for his feet to work the rudders.
Yeah.
Enter if you want to go forward.
Enter? Yep.
Now, on top of that, the stick, was that a piece of wood?
Yeah. That's just a knob, so his hand wouldn't get sore if he held onto it like that, you know, just decoration, I suppose, too, is in a way. There's a picture of the instrument panel. You can see the very right side was the clock, and below that was the primer. Oh, there's a good shot. He had, up on the top were two automotive type lights, and they were powered by what we used to call in the old days a hot shot battery, like the old doorbell batteries in the old days. And he had two of those, and they were very heavy. So when he got to New York, they started making some changes. They took those out, and the batteries out, and he just took two flashlights with him, which he had in his flight suit. So he was conscious about weight. Actually, the first time that airplane ever flew with that much fuel was when he took off for Paris. They did the testing out in San Diego off a very rough field, and they were doing flight testing, load testing, and they had their plotted chart that they figured, well, this is what it should do. So they'd put this much amount of fuel in it, and they'd take off, and it matched right up with their charted figures. And the field was so rough that they only went up to 300 gallons because they were worried about damaging the landing gear. So when he got to New York and they get ready for the flight to Paris, they put another 150 gallons in it. And that's the first time he ever flew with that much fuel. So.
Where was, you said something about there being like a little periscope or something that you could look through?
Yeah, right there.
Oh, it was right there.
And then that knob right on the left side extended it or retracted it. And you can just see in there the 45-degree angle of the mirror. There was two mirrors. So.
What would the altitude generally be over the Atlantic?
It varied. He was from 20 feet up to 10,000 feet. So he tried to get over some weather and stuff. And it's a funny thing, he said in his book he was climbing up to altitude, and all of a sudden his head's hitting the top of the cabin there. And then he realized that he was sitting on an air cushion. And as he ascended, the air started to expand inside the cushion, and it raised him up. So, and that little funnel down there on the bottom, everybody thinks that's a relief tube, but it's not. Right above it is the main gascolator or fuel strainer. And if any water collected in the fuel system, it would collect in the bottom of that bowl. And he could open a little valve on the bottom and just drain a little bit of fuel out, and he could see if there was water in it. So that's what that funnel is for. The large stick on the side here is the pitch trim control. That's the only trimming he had on the airplane was pitch. He didn't have any aileron or rudder trim on the airplane. But he could control the pitch of the airplane. Magneto switches up there.
Dual magneto?
Yes.
What's the displacement on that engine?
Oh, was it 788 cubic inches? I I can't remember the numbers, but something like that. I think it's 788. Does anybody know? It's 788.
785 was the production model.
Okay, good. Yes.
Since you referred to it briefly just a moment ago, 33 hours is a long time to go without visiting the facility. So yeah.
He never mentioned that in his book. Actually, he did, I think. But
You probably didn't have a big meal either.
well,
I mean,
I don't know.
Nowadays you have so much food, but what did they eat at that time?
Excuse me?
What kind of food did they take with, did he take with
I think he had a couple of ham sandwiches, and he had a 4-quart canteen for water. But, sir?
Yeah, I read a story, an account that after he made the flight and he went to England with the plane, he got an audience with King
Right.
George V. And the king asked him, what did you do about peeing?
Yeah, he said a thermos or something.
He said, yeah, and he had a can, and he said, well, what did you do with it? And
Yeah.
he said, well, I thought I better tidy up the plane, so when I was over France, the King of England said, that was a good choice of country.
That's why they hate us.
I would say 33 hours is a long time to stay awake, too.
Well, that was probably the only thing that he didn't really account for. He calculated everything out right out, but sleep, about 2 hours into the flight, he started feeling tired, according to his book, so.
If he was going up really high, would there be any risk of freezing in the pipelines for the fuel or anything like that?
No, the fuel, that's why you would check for water periodically.
That was like
Yeah, but the water would come from condensation mainly, just from the atmosphere getting into the tanks and then the cooling, and you could form a little bit of water in there, but it wasn't very much if there was any. So the altitude had nothing to do with the fuel freezing or anything.
How long was he continuously awake from the pre-flight check to he gets on the ground and he has thousands of French people?
Well, they figured he was awake for over 50 hours.
Wow.
And he did get pretty. He dozed off a couple of times from what I've read, but it's hard to say. Yes.
What was the longest distance he had flown nonstop before he flew across the Atlantic?
I would say maybe from California to St. Louis, nonstop.
What's that, 1,500 miles, 1,700?
Yeah, he did set a transcontinental speed record. Yeah, he went from San Diego to St. Louis to New York. So that was a record right there that he set.
But he had no real practice in the sort of endurance required to...
Well, when he was flying the mail, but those legs weren't that long.
Yeah.
So. You got any more pictures? How are we doing on time?
We're close, but maybe 10 minutes?
Okay.
I think two more slides.
You ring the bell when we're ready. This is our spirit that we're working on. You can see some of the lower cowl. Oh, you can see our fuel tank. You want to point that out, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
Our fuel tank is right behind the firewall. And actually, the original Spirit of St. Louis didn't have a firewall. Where our firewall is, that's stainless steel. Like I say, we're using modern materials wherever possible, as long as it doesn't distract from the original appearance. His firewall was the oil tank. And they figured since the aluminum oil tank was in that whole area, they didn't need a firewall, so they didn't put a firewall on it. There you can see the shock cords for the landing gear suspension, the shock struts. It was bungee cords. And everybody says, well, bungee cords are brand new, and they're jumping off bridges and stuff. And no, bungee cords go back to prior to World War I. Blériot had bungee cords suspending his landing gear, and they've been working ever since. All your Piper Cubs today, you can still get the bungee cords for those. So that's one of the biggest questions when people see that, you know, and they come up for the shows and stuff. They look around and they, oh, bungee cords. And then we have a sign that we hang on the bottom of the engine. It says, keep out. And then underneath it, there's somebody wrote, of the water. And you'd be surprised how many people come up and they look in the hangar and they see the sign, they look down and, where's the water? So that's the Atlantic Ocean they're talking about. But, and that sign was, we made a replica of the sign because that's one that he had in New York. They had that sign hanging on the rope of the hangar. And here's our airplane again. We're getting there. So.
Yeah, this is kind of where it is currently. Currently, Ken's working on the wing right now, but he just finished up his cowling pieces and these blisters. These are for the magnetos. A lot of work just in forming that piece and bending it and making it all work.
Now, on the L and the U, there's like a scrap, like scrapes. Is that?
That's reflections of the light. Yeah.
Maybe I just like to make it look like
Authenticity.
Okay, no.
Yeah, the only piece of cowling we have left to do is the very top piece that fares into the wing there, and that's a big challenge. I'm still not sure how I'm going to make that, but it requires several compound curves, and even though we're using dead soft aluminum up there, it's still quite challenging. We have an English wheel that we use for forming metal and stuff like that, and we can't use that for that particular curve, and I'm not sure how they did it at the factory. So the factory, the sheet metal guy was Fred Rohr, and he made all the cowlings, and his company is still in existence, and they make a lot of jet engine nacelles and stuff that are flying out there today. So that company has quite a history. Yes?
A non-Lindbergh question. But earlier you mentioned the founder, this has been driving me nuts the last half an hour, was born around January 1929, yet he fought in the Battle of the Bulge, so he was about 15 when he fought in that battle.
I'm not sure when what was his birthday?
Cole Palin. The first flight.
He was in the Battle of the Bulge, but
Yeah, it seemed he would have been.
that's why I'm saying I'm not sure what his birth date, if that was accurate.
1928.
So almost 1929, and the battle was 44. So.
Right.
Yeah, but you'd have young then.
He was about
17. He was about lost
50.
That's a good question. I never thought of that before.
Lies by his age.
That could be.
Germans were sending him in at 14 or 15.
Right. And then the last slide we have is just of our Albatross D5A, which Sachs Middle School helped us to restore. Like Vivian was saying, Ken flew the first flight, and it's been flying ever since. Very nice.
I went there a long time ago. You have certain days for certain age aircraft. I mean, when you stage your things, it's like pre-World War I.
I'll let Mike handle that.
Saturdays, Saturday's kind of history of flight air show, and that chronicles flight from the Wright brothers, 1903, all the way up until the last of the planes that we represent, which is 1939. So the pioneer period, which is earliest, then World War I, and then the barnstorming period, which is kind of what we talked about today. That's Saturday, and then Sunday really focuses on World War I and culminates with the dogfight at the end of the show between couple of our War Ones. Ken usually flies the D7 in that show.
So depending on what flavor planes you like. is
Yep, usually I
how
tell
you
people
determine your
if,
day.
you know, both shows are a lot of fun. Sunday's a bit louder. We have more pyro and bombs and stuff like that going off. So if you have little kids and they don't like the noisy stuff, come Saturday. But if you want to see the War One stuff and the tank run and the dogfight and all that, then come Sunday. But they're both a lot of fun. Yeah.
Did you bring any brochures?
No, I didn't. I wish I had, but I didn't bring it. Yeah. But if you go to oldrhinebeck.org, like it says here, it has everything there. Or if you email the aerodrome, you have any questions after today, info, oldrhinebeck.org, and ask for me. I'll be happy to send some your way, or, you know, hook you up with them. Or Vivian can probably get you some too. Yeah, my faux pas. All right, anything else?